cancer care that is compassionate, personalized, and driven by clinical research. More at stlukeshealth.org/cancer.
Weather brought to you by Paul D. Clode, attorney, mediator, arbitrator. Fog advisory has just been extended until 10 a.m. It's just slow to burn off. We need that sun, maybe a little bit of breeze as well. 80-ish for the high, could break a record. Mid-60s for the low tonight. Tomorrow looks the same. And then rain chances for Thursday going into Friday. We're at 66, Missouri City 65 here at the University of Houston. West Sam southbound Clay Road, trying to clean up an accident for you. Streaming live online, HoustonPublicMedia.org. Download our app as well. KUHF Houston, News 88.7. The service of the University of Houston. Time for Houston Matters, 9 o'clock.
The U.S. arrest of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro raises lots of questions, including what lies ahead for Houston area Venezuelans, many of whom lost temporary protected status last year and now face conflicting signals from the Trump administration about potential pathways to legal status. I'm Craig Cohen. Today on Houston Matters, area immigration attorney Ruby Powers on those questions, signals, and pathways.
Houston Matters with Craig Cohen is a production of Houston Public Media with support from Baylor College of Medicine.
Also this hour, as part of our continuing public service to help you get 2026 off to a good start, we welcome your questions about how to get a better night's sleep for sleep expert Dr. Brandy McKelvy from UTHealth Houston. Send those questions now to talk@houstonmatters.org. We'll start with a news update from NPR and News 88.7. Stay with us.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. Residents of Caracas reported heavy gunfire last night just around Venezuela's presidential palace. NPR's Ada Peralta reports it appears to stem from confusion.
On social media, videos from Caracas showed men with rifles trading fire on the streets. From their balconies, residents saw what appeared to be anti-aircraft fire streaking through the air. The government's information ministry told the Spanish news agency EFE that the gunfire was to dissuade drones overflying Miraflores, the presidential palace. The violence surfaced fears that there might be a struggle for power following the U.S. capture of President Nicolás Maduro. But earlier in the day, Venezuela's Vice President Delcy Rodriguez was sworn in as acting president. The Minister of Defense, Vladimir Padrino, also said the Venezuelan armed forces are firmly behind Rodriguez. Ada Peralta, NPR News, Cúcuta, Colombia.
President Trump might discuss Venezuela further today. He's meeting with Republican lawmakers this hour at the Kennedy Center in Washington. NPR's Barbara Sprunt reports the focus of the meeting is supposed to be on election strategy for the midterm elections.
In the past, when the president has joined these kind of like weekly conference meetings that Republicans have, it almost becomes like a rally. And it's hard not to envision that happening today, given that they're gearing up as a party for the midterm elections. So I think Venezuela will be part of the conversation. I don't think it will be the only topic. And members will have an additional briefing on Venezuela tomorrow.
NPR's Barbara Sprunt reporting. Last night, Trump administration officials briefed a handful of top congressional leaders from both parties on the Venezuela situation. Democratic lawmakers have been demanding more answers about President Trump's declaration that the U.S. will run Venezuela. Republicans said last night that their briefing was thorough and their questions were answered. Stocks opened higher this morning as crude oil prices inch upward. NPR's Scott Horsley reports the Dow Jones Industrial Average rose about 120 points in early trading.
Crude oil in the U.S. is trading at less than $59 a barrel. That's up slightly from the weekend when U.S. forces seized Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro. But prices are still low enough that major oil companies may think twice about making big investments to revitalize Venezuela's long-neglected oil industry. An oil pipeline operator has drawn a record fine for spilling more than 1 million gallons of oil into the Gulf of Mexico back in 2023. Regulators say the Third Coast Company allowed oil to keep flowing through a leaky pipeline for hours after gauges signaled a possible problem. And U.S.-based companies have won an exemption from an international tax agreement that would have assessed a 15% minimum corporate tax worldwide. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
On Wall Street, the Dow has now risen to about 140 points to 49,116. You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Luminescence Foundation. Luminescence Foundation is dedicated to shedding light on neurological research focused on Alzheimer's and Parkinson's diseases and supporting land conservation initiatives. This is NPR.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Matt Harab. Beginning this hour, the trial begins for a former Uvalde School District police officer involved in the response to the mass shooting back in 2022 at Robb Elementary School. Adrian Gonzalez is charged with 29 counts of abandoning children in connection with the failed law enforcement response. Here's New York Law School professor Kirk Burkhalter. He says the case is unprecedented.
I can't even think of a case where specifically a police officer was charged with just simply not doing their job when it comes to a member of the public.
Prosecutors say Gonzalez was one of the first officers on the scene and failed to confront the shooter who killed 19 students and 2 teachers. Gonzalez has pleaded not guilty to all of the charges. Court records indicate a lawyer from a Houston-based law firm is representing Celia Flores, the wife of ousted Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Flores pleaded not guilty in a New York court yesterday. News 88.7's Kyle McClanagan has more on her attorney.
Court documents from the Southern District of New York show that attorney Mark Donnelly of the Houston-based Parker, Sanchez & Donnelly law firm is representing Flores in the case. Donnelly said in a statement, the defense looks forward to presenting its side in court. Donnelly specializes in white-collar criminal defense. He previously spent 12 years at the Department of Justice, according to the law firm's website. At the DOJ, Donnelly served as a senior advisor to the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District Court of Texas and ran the district's fraud division for 2 years. Donnelly, a Houston native, also served as a prosecutor for the Harris County DA's office. In 2023, Donnelly was among the lawyers who assisted in the investigation that led to the impeachment trial of Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. I'm Kyle McClanagan, News 88.7.
Fuel prices continue to trickle down. The average price for a gallon of regular in Houston is currently $2.37. That's about 11 cents cheaper than a month ago. And the Astros have signed a high-profile pitcher from Japan. Tsutsaya Imai had his initial news conference yesterday. He agreed to a 3-year, $54 million contract last week. General Manager Dana Brown says the move was made to beef up a starting pitching rotation that is likely losing its best starting pitcher, Framber Valdez, to free agency. I'm Matt Harab, News 88.7.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Craig Cohen. Good morning. Thanks for joining us here on News 88.7 and on Houston Public Media's YouTube channel. Coming up this hour, your questions about sleep and sleep disorders for an area physician. Also, our Brenda Valdivia visits the recent Houston Cat Expo. First, though, the arrest of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro throws a lot about the future of that country into uncertainty. It also may complicate the lives of Venezuelans living here in Houston and across the United States who are among the more than 7.9 million Venezuelans who have left their country since 2014. Houston is home to one of the largest Venezuelan communities in the United States, but many of them lost temporary protected status last year and wonder what comes next as they navigate an increasingly restrictive immigration landscape. Ruby Powers is an area immigration attorney. She tells Houston Matters producer Mincho Jacob there are conflicting signals from the Trump administration about area Venezuelans' potential pathways to legal status.
We've had multiple waves of Venezuelans coming to the United States. And so some of the first early waves, maybe about 20 or so years ago, some of them are U.S. citizens and they're petitioning for their family members. But either between family-based immigration or maybe they had another citizenship and they were able to do an investment, like maybe they were Spanish as well or Italian, or asylum. Many applied for asylum and they're just getting interviews like I was mentioning, or temporary protected status, which was opened up in 2021 and 2023. And then there also was the parole that opened up as well temporarily to try to, under the Biden administration, to try to prevent illegal entries. And so individuals came that way. So there's been multiple avenues for Venezuelans to either find a temporary or more of a long-term status here. And I know that they've been a huge component to our economy and our community. I actually read Judge Lina Hidalgo's comment about her take on this transition, and she says Harris County has the fourth largest Venezuelan population in the U.S. And actually, I didn't even realize that until I read that, but I believe it. And we have been hit hard by the pausing and the ending of the TPS and also the bans, and that was all before this weekend. With the community has been hit hard by changes in U.S. immigration.
There was some confusion this week. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem suggested that Venezuelans could apply for refugee status even if they had their TPS canceled. And then the department walked that back on social media. But what is the difference between the refugee status and asylum? And what are the options that Venezuelans currently living here in the U.S. without permission, what kind of options do they have?
So refugee is when you apply for humanitarian help through international humanitarian law and human rights law outside of the country. And usually when you think like refugee camps and things like that. So you're held outside till you're processed through a series of bureaucracy to be allowed, and background checks and things like that, to be allowed to be sort of sent to a country that's taking refugees. And historically, under Trump administration, he has made that number very low, if almost nothing, the number of refugees that he allows during his administration. Asylum is when you're in the United States and you're applying and you're saying that you've either been persecuted in the past or you have fear of future persecution on one of 5 protected grounds, and you have nowhere else to go in your home country, nowhere else to go in the world. I think the biggest question is what does this mean for Venezuelans who are in some type of a temporary or expiring status here in the United States? And because I'm thinking about that, I've got asylum interviews in about a week. We've got court cases coming up. I would think my answers to them would be this is very fluid. Just because the leader was taken out of the country. And I mean, this is very dynamic, minute to minute. We're getting headlines, updates of what's going on. We're not really sure how it's going to shake out. But for the Venezuelans who are listening, I would say I would probably stay the course of what you were planning to do here in the United States. Keep monitoring the news because we're not sure how it's all going to shake out. But I do know from doing asylum for so many years that just because one leader change doesn't mean the entire country changes. And it can take years for systematic change in a positive light to even come back to some type of normalcy. And so I do know that the Trump administration is trying to repatriate a lot of the Venezuelans back to Venezuela. But at the same point, it doesn't actually mean that their lives will be safe, depending on the reason why they left in the first place. So those are a lot of my concerns as an immigration attorney. And I think it really depends on a case by case basis, but it is a very fluid situation. I don't think anybody knows how this is all going to play out.
You mentioned the travel ban or migration ban that was put in place by the Trump administration, including Venezuela, with many other countries limiting immigrants who can come here legally. And Venezuela is among those. Is there anything that folks that have elderly parents or siblings in Venezuela, if they're here in the United States, to bring them here? Or is there very limited options at this point?
I think it depends on the specifics of the ban at the time, because there could be something announced, right? And then there could be litigation about that. And so then I'm not saying like just halt everything, but there are a lot of things paused right now. And we're hoping that we'll see some of that lifted. But for the most part, I would say have a consultation with an experienced immigration attorney to evaluate your specific situation, especially if you're like a U.S. citizen who is considering petitioning for your parents that are maybe in Venezuela and you're trying to bring them here or somewhere. And, I think it really sort of just depends on the circumstance. All of that does take time anyway. And some of the announcements that are happening from the Trump administration, they get pulled back. Like you were even mentioning what the secretary said, and then they've been sort of walking back that. Even we saw the whole H-1B debacle a few months ago when they announced something and then they've been walking that back ever since. But anyway, I think you just have to be talking to somebody about your specific facts and monitoring that your specific situation. But in many of the bans, they do have exceptions for family of U.S. citizens, and so you just have to find out what's in place at that moment, and if that relationship overcomes that restriction.
If you're a person who is thinking of any of these channels, I mean, what is the best way to be prepared, to be taking steps that, like, I don't know if you've heard of TPS as a possibility of getting reinstated. I mean, what can people do to be best prepared for any options that could come available in the future?
Things don't happen really quickly. Let's just remind people that, like, some people who applied for asylum in 2016 just got their interviews in 2025. True story. Multiple true stories there. So I think, like, it really depends on the individual. If it's asylum, if it's a family-based petition, if there's another country they can go to, if there's they have another citizenship that maybe allows them for an E2, like I was talking Spanish, for example, Italian. But then there also could be employment-based. That's another thing that people have been exploring. But even if you wanted to do, let's say, the labor certification perm process, I mean, we're talking a couple of years to do that. And so if you're just thinking about it now, you might have to go to another country for a few years waiting if you don't need to not overstay your status. And so those some of these things would take a lot longer. I think there's others who are exploring national interest waivers. Again, that does have a backlog as well. And so you usually take 6 months to prepare, and then there's usually about a 2-year backlog for the visa, year and a half for the visa to be available. So I always have a backup plan, but even the backup plans might be taking a really long time. So it is unfortunate, the predicament that Venezuelans in the United States and around the world are in, even in Venezuela at this moment as well. But I think as much foresight and planning that you can put into your case to have a backup plan, and having a reputable experienced immigration attorney that's paying attention to everything and sort of give you the best perspectives. Because a lot of times what I'll do is we'll have plan A, B, and C, and we'll just pivot as it progresses, because there's a lot of perspectives about what happened this weekend on Venezuelans, Venezuelan Americans, Venezuelans in Venezuela. And I don't want to, belittle anyone's perspective and anyone's voice in any respect. But even just from my immigration attorney hat, I would just say that I know that even with a leader removed, things can still be continuing the way that people were afraid of. And as like my asylum hat, I guess you could say more specifically. And I think a lot of the Venezuelans here are still in the United States. Asylum is one of their last and probably only option that many of them have. And so, I mean, I think that's something to still explore. It doesn't mean that you can't pursue that. We're going to just have to keep monitoring what's happening with the administration. And I would just say, unfortunately, just pay attention to what's going on in the news. Have a reputable immigration attorney to lean on. Have a few sources of information. And it is very fluid, but we're hoping for the best for everyone. And we do care about Venezuela and Venezuelans, and they are part of the fabric of our community.
That's Ruby Powers, Houston area immigration attorney and founder of the Powers Law Group. She spoke with Houston Matters producer Mincho Jacob. Up next, resolved to get more sleep here in the new year? We can help by answering your questions about sleep and sleep disorders at talk@houstonmatters.org or call 713-440-8870. And stay with us as Houston Matters continues on News 88.7 and YouTube.
Hi, I'm Lenny Ambrose from St. Arnold Brewing Company, proud supporters of Houston Public Media. Right now, with your $60 donation, you can choose tickets to News and Brews. This member-exclusive event takes place February 17th. Enjoy a pint, connect with fellow NPR fans, and meet the Houston Public Media newsroom in person. Select News and Brews tickets when you donate at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
education, and care that push the frontiers of modern science.
Support comes from the law firm McFarland PLLC, eminent domain attorneys focused exclusively on representing landowners against the government's taking of private property for public use across the state of Texas. More at McFarlandPLLC.com.
Houston Matters with Craig Cohen is made possible in part by Ellen Benninghoven and Dr. Michael Schaefer, and with gifts from listeners like you.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Craig Cohen. Of all the things we do on this show to provide a public service, there may be no more critical one than this: helping you to get a good night's sleep by fielding your questions about sleep and sleep disorders. There are all kinds of things, let's face it, that can disrupt our sleep. Houstonians suffer from insomnia and snoring and sleep apnea. Some sleepwalk, some even sleep eat. There are things that we can do to try and minimize that, limit that, do away with it. And since I share the roads with all of you, I'd like you to be, well-rested and clear-headed, right before you cut me off on the highway. It is in that spirit we welcome in Dr. Brandy McKelvy, MD, sleep medicine physician at UTHealth Houston. Dr. McKelvy, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us. And we welcome any and all questions you have about sleep and sleep disorders. You can call or text 713-440-8870. You can email us at talk@houstonmatters.org. You can also post questions on our video stream. That's on Houston Public Media's YouTube channel. All right, so it is a new year, Dr. McKelvy, and there may be some folks who have, in fact, resolved to get a better night's sleep. Let's start there with some basics. How much sleep should we get every night?
Well, the party line is 8 hours. That is the current recommendation for the number of hours to adequately restore your brain and your body to function the way it's supposed to function. The average is between 7 and 9, but if you take large longitudinal studies, it comes out at about 8.115 hours is what the normalized amount of sleep that people should have.
Are there some folks, though, who do get by very well with less sleep or with more sleep?
It's a U-shaped curve, actually, and the mortality worsens if you're on either side of that inflection point. So if you get less than 8 hours of sleep, you actually can have negative impacts. Even though people think they're functioning okay, less than 8 hours of sleep actually can impact your health, your brain, your heart, and otherwise. Longer sleepers are also part of the normal bell curve, but we do see that the mortality can increase with longer sleepers because those people are normally sleeping longer because they may have other health issues, cancer or otherwise, neurologic disorders, etc.
Do you want to get that 8.11 hours of sleep all at once, or is it okay if it's split up a little bit?
Sometimes people function pretty well with broken up, but our recommendation is that you try to get consolidate all that sleep in one bed sitting or bedtime.
In addition to that, do naps help?
Naps will help depending on what your underlying sleep dysfunction is. If it's inadequate amount of total sleep, then additional naps can help. If you have an organic sleep dysfunction or disease, then naps actually may not be helpful if what is the problem is fragmented sleep. The more amount of sleep you get, even though it's disrupted or fragmented, then the total is not going to help.
Okay. So it's an issue if you're waking up every hour or two. That's a real problem.
It can be a real problem because that implies that sleep is fragmented and you may not be going into the deeper stages of sleep or REM sleep, which is also very important for the body's restorative functions.
How important is it to try to head to sleep at roughly the same time every night?
That is one of the most important things that we say. Keeping a schedule and keeping a same bedtime and bed-wake time keeps your brain focused and keeps what we call your circadian rhythm on target. So we all went through college and we all were bad sleepers and we stayed up really late and we partied, or some of us, and then we got up really early and went to class. But that's bad habits. So you should try to, if you have to be up at 8 o'clock or 6 o'clock, whatever it is, and then count backwards for 8 hours, and that should be your bedtime every day of the week as best you can.
What are some of the major things that tend to disrupt our sleep?
Well, before falling asleep, that is where we see a lot of the major disruptors, right? So anything that has a light or a background has a blue light in it. So blue light, so TVs, iPads, phones, TV, computer monitors, all of that have blue light background, and all that will disrupt the pineal gland in your brain and disrupt melatonin production. And melatonin production is important to stabilize your sleep-wake time. So we say no blue light of any kind at least 2 hours before you want to be asleep. And so that is one of the major disruptors. Of course, life is a major disruptor, having work to do or taking care of the kids, getting them to bed, food, eat, exercise, all of those things can be influencing. During the actual sleep phase, disruptors we see can be too much light in the bedroom, a room that's not cold enough.
How cold is cold enough?
Well, everyone's different, but the recommendation is like in the mid 60s.
Ooh.
Would be, a little too cold for me.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. I'm sorry.
But when you sort of do the large term studies where you have people deep sleep in controlled settings at different temperatures, like the mid 60s is actually what turned out to be the best when you monitor the sleep at the same time.
How about noise? There's some folks who cannot sleep without certain noise, something in the background, and others who have to have silence.
Yeah. So I hear that a lot from our patients that they want some noise. So if you're going to have noise in the background, we recommend what's called white noise or brown noise, something that your brain can't focus on, that it's actually calming and soothing. Repetitive noises are bad. External noises are also bad. Car horns, ambulances. I mean, that's all sort of part of life. It should be on the quieter side as best you can. If you need that background noise, we want something that is not distracting to your brain.
And I would also throw in, think for just a moment about what is it you really want to dream about? Because it could be that whatever you're listening to might find its way in.
Can definitely influence your dreams in some ways. So, yeah.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Craig Cohen. We are discussing sleep and sleep disorders with sleep expert Dr. Brandy McKelvy. She's from UTHealth Houston, and we welcome your questions and comments at 713-440-8870 or talk at Houston Matters. You can also post a question on our YouTube channel. Again, join our conversation, 713-440-8870 or talk at houstonmatters.org. And stay with us as Houston Matters continues on News 88.7 and YouTube.
You count on Houston Public Media. That's why you're here right now. Take the next step and become a new member today. Every gift makes a difference. And with a gift of $5 a month or more, you'll receive PBS Passport, a member benefit that lets you stream more of the shows you love anytime. It only takes a minute to make a big difference. Join as a new member today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 800-364-8300.
At mfah.org.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from the Clarion at Brazosport College, presenting the Westerlies Brass Quartet, performing in concert on Friday, January 16th. More information at brazosport.edu/Clarion.
Support comes from Rothko Chapel, presenting the 31st MLK birthday observance. We Got Us, Health and Care Beyond Capitalism, on January 15th at 6:30 p.m. More information at rothkochapel.org.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Craig Cohen. We are talking about sleep and sleep disorders and fielding your questions for Dr. Brandy McKelvy, sleep medicine physician with UTHealth Houston. You can call or text 713-440-8870. You can email us at talk@houstonmatters.org. You can also post your question in the chat on our video stream on Houston Public Media's YouTube channel. You alluded to this before the break, but how can diet and exercise affect our sleep?
Definitely. So one of the things about diet and obesity and being overweight can influence the risk of developing sleep apnea. So an adequate diet limited with the amount of caffeine that you have before bedtime. We recommend no caffeine at least 6 hours before when you want to have your sleep time. And then exercise is also very important. We want to advocate for exercise. However, too close to bedtime can also disrupt your ability to go to sleep because of the endorphin rushes that come from exercise. You need an adequate amount of time for all of that to wear off. So exercise no closer than 3 hours to what your bed sleep time wants to be.
Okay, so don't eat how many hours before bed? Did you say 6?
Caffeine.
Oh, caffeine intake.
Yeah.
No more than 6 hours before bed.
And
Okay.
but also eating too close to bedtime can contribute to reflux, which
Right.
also can disrupt sleep. So you want to be conscious that it's like a 5-4-2 rule where you don't want to have too much caffeine, too much eating, too much exercise, and no screen time up until bedtime.
Okay.
So you start spacing that out.
What are we supposed to do in that hour or two or more between no TV and no exercise and no eating?
Well, we got to find something that's calming to our brain. So a bedtime routine or relaxation. So exercise that's non-strenuous is okay. So, meditation, yoga, stretching, all of those types of exercise can be okay closer to bedtime. And then whatever else your other bedtime relaxation routine, reading without anything that's backlit. So go back to old school newspapers or books, Kindles that are blacklit, black and white that are not colored can be fine for reading. Crochet, knitting, crosswords, whatever your non-videoed preferred.
All right. Let's take a call. We have Gabriella on the line. Gabriella, what's your question?
Hi. I was wondering, so in regards to the white and brown noise that you had mentioned earlier, my husband and I, we sleep with a show that we watch very often. We know it by heart. We can quote every line. It's Mystery Science Theater, but we also sleep with face masks. So I wanted to know, how does that compare to white noise and brown noise, if it's something that doesn't distract us and brings us comfort and, puts us to sleep?
It's MST3K after all. This is quality television. She's asking.
It is quality.
Yeah.
And it's comforting and it's solid. It brings us solace and we know it by heart. We sometimes, we wait for certain scenes, but like once that scene comes, we just, we're the lights are out, we're knocked out.
Well, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. I love the good throwback reference. I'm not sure all the listeners are going to be familiar with that TV show, but maybe.
It's Tom Servo and Crow. They have to know this. Come on.
I am happy to hear that you sleep with a mask. That actually can be very helpful for people that have otherwise too much light in the room. It also tells me that you're not watching the TV per se. I can tell you there's no literature or studies comparing Mystery Science Theater to brown noise or white noise. That I can't tell you. But if it's helping you sleep and you feel like you're sleeping adequately and your sleep is not disrupted and you wake up refreshed, then I think then that's fine. Everyone is different. Potentially, it can be distracting to your brain if your brain is waiting to hear that funny line, that your favorite old saying or old bit that was from that TV show. It may be distracting to your brain, but I cannot say that without putting you in a lab and putting on the TV with that show and then seeing what happens.
All right. Thanks very much for the call. We appreciate it. Question from Brandon on YouTube. What are some habits to practice if you have multiple commitments in a week, multiple jobs, meetings, etc., and you don't want to rely on sleep aids?
Yeah, I think it goes back to some of the things that we were just mentioning, which is trying to have a stable wake time and bedtime, not staying up too late if you can help it. Again, trying to consolidate that sleep all into one sitting. If you have to take naps to stay refreshed, then obviously that can be helpful and keep you refreshed before your next meetings. We try to limit naps to less than 30 minutes because you actually don't want to go into a REM cycle during your nap time because it actually can cause it to be harder to wake up after the nap. Relaxation be out before bedtime, and a stable sleep routine is the best things that we can try to promote. There's a lot of distractions in the world today. So those would be my advice.
You mentioned sleep apnea earlier. We should probably talk a little bit about it. What is it? What causes it?
So sleep apnea is a disease dysfunction of breathing during sleep. It is pretty prevalent. In adult men in the United States, it can be upwards to 20 to 30% of adults. And in women, that's about 10 to 20%. It averages about 30 million people in the United States probably have sleep apnea. It's estimated that maybe 80% of people don't know they have sleep apnea.
Yeah, I guess one of the hard things is unless there is somebody who is awake and in the room when suddenly you are snoring and clearly having trouble breathing or something's going on that they can identify, then there's no way you may know yourself.
Sometimes. There are some other clues that can be helpful. So we use a screening tool that can help indicate that you might have sleep apnea if you're worried about your sleep not being adequate. So if you're snoring, that's an increased risk. Remember, snoring is the sound of air moving through a narrowed airway, sort of like hearing rapids is water moving through a narrowed space. So snoring can suggest sleep apnea, but not everybody that snores has sleep apnea. So that can be a clue. If you wake up gasping for breath or choking when you sleep on your back, if you have a dry mouth in the morning, if you wake up with headaches first thing in the morning, those may be clues that you have sleep apnea. Obviously, if you have a bed partner who's been run out of the room because there's too much loud snoring, that may be high on the list. But other things like uncontrolled blood pressure or requiring more than one or two blood pressure medicines to control your blood pressure may be a signal that you have underlying sleep apnea. Being tired during the day. Now, there's a lot of things that make us tired, but actual sleepiness and wanting to fall asleep when you're driving or at work or at school, and unrefreshing naps, because the naps aren't about the amount of sleep, it's about fragmented sleep when you have sleep apnea, can be some clues. If you have an unexplained stroke, heart failure, heart arrhythmias, those also may be some external clues that there's underlying sleep apnea. These are the type of patients that we screen. Again, sleep apnea increases with morbidity, more obesity, and then the more girth you have on your neck, that's more pressure and tissue pressuring on your airway that may collapse while you're sleeping. Gender, men more commonly than women, and then as we age. So women tend to be protected before menopause because there's an estrogen production, but then after 50, the older we get, the more increased risk that you may have sleep apnea.
Brent writes, I was diagnosed with mild sleep apnea over a year ago. I've been using CPAP every night. There hasn't been a single night that I leave the CPAP on my face all night. The doctor told me he could see improvement even with the hours wearing the mask just for a few hours. Is that true?
Absolutely. So some is better than none. We don't always strive for perfection. Any amount of CPAP you're wearing means that it's treating the sleep apnea while you're sleeping and while you're wearing it, including naps. So rather than having 6 hours of fragmented, disrupted sleep, if you get 2 or 3 hours with the CPAP, which is improving and treating your sleep apnea, that's going to improve your cognition, your level of sleepiness, and your ability to function. So we appreciate any amount of CPAP wearing.
Let's take another call. Jan's on the line in Cyprus. Jan, what's your question for Dr. McKelvy?
Hi, good morning. I started having problems with, I can't remember what you called it now, waking up in the night back 30-some years ago, and I've been dealing with this for this long. I have the CPAP. I read a regular book. I don't drink caffeine. I know those kind of rules to go to sleep. I usually try to go to sleep by about 11, but I wake up 3 to 4 times a week at about 4, and then I'm awake for a couple of hours, and I will get up, I'll read, and then I get sleepy, and I'm back in bed at 7, but then I have to get up to do things or get up to go to work. It's a significant problem, and I wondered what your thoughts might be about this.
Well, it sounds like it's fairly complex if it's been going on for 30 years. Insomnia can be quite complicated to unpack when it's been going on for a long time. It sounds like you're practicing good sleep hygiene, which is the combination of all those things that we've talked about so far and that you mentioned. If you don't mind, I'm asking, how old are you at this point?
I am 66 at this point.
Congratulations. One of the things that happens with aging is that our circadian rhythm changes, and it increases risk of early morning awakenings. Rarely that can also be a sign of depression, although I can't diagnose that over the phone. So it sounds like you are doing a lot of the right things, but I think that this is going to need to be a more elaborate conversation with your physician or a sleep physician. You should have a sleep physician who monitors your CPAP anyway, so that we can make sure that that's working and adequately treating the sleep apnea, because that's sort of step one. And then sometimes we'll use a sleep diary to track your sleep on and off and what you're doing during the night and what's happening. And then we can reevaluate. Some people do have chronic insomnia. That is a real thing. That does sometimes require medications, but more likely we sort of work on all the pieces. And cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBTI, can also be very helpful for insomnia patients.
Thanks very much for the call and good luck. Speaking of tracking sleep, Bill asks, are the smart watches accurate at tracking sleep?
In some ways. They're not foolproof. They basically are actigraphy, which means it monitors your movement. If you're moving less, then the watch interprets that you're in a deeper phase of sleep, which seems reasonable. But it doesn't really track your brain waves or your oxygenation. So it is lacking in some parts that is valuable to know for us to know exactly how good your sleep is. But in general, it can be helpful to let you know if you're moving around too much or tossing or turning or waking up a lot. And also monitoring your heart rate can be clues for us.
Out of curiosity, last year I downloaded an app called Snore Lab, which measures how much and how often you snore. Basically, it's a microphone. It's recording for hours at a time, and it notices when there are fairly loud noises and stretches, and then derives a score based off of that. And the lower the score, the better you're sleeping is the idea. I'm happy to say I had a low score and only could find one stretch where I was snoring, decently loudly, and then it was gone. Is that helpful, or is that just not really all that scientifically based?
I'm not completely familiar, to be honest, about all that technology, but if it's a microphone, it's measuring decibels, and it's an external way to measure the amount of snoring, especially if you don't have anyone else in the room or a bed partner, it could be a clue that then we could follow up on to see if we need to evaluate if you really have sleep apnea or not.
Any new research into sleep disorders that we ought to know about? Anything that's happened in the last year or two that's having any impact on how you're treating patients?
No major changes. There's constantly new developments in pharmaceuticals to treat true chronic insomnia, and those can be very helpful because they're targeting different pathways and different chemicals for those true chronic insomniacs. Because there's so many people with sleep apnea and not everyone loves the CPAP, there are the new technologies to stimulate your hypoglossal nerve, which can help open the airway at night. That's called the Inspire machine. So there's been a couple of versions of that, and that can be very helpful for patients that just don't ever tolerate the CPAP or don't like it. That technology is a bit more invasive, but it's developing, and some people really really benefit from it.
All right. One brief tip that everybody can do to get a better night's sleep.
I would say my advice is don't stay in the bed for too long waiting to go to sleep. So we say get in the bed when you want to go to sleep and get out of the bed when you want to get up in the morning. So reserve the bed for sleeping or adult cuddling, so to speak. So, and that's it. Don't do anything else in your bed. Don't, read the newspaper, watch the TV, or any of those other things. Reserve the bed for sleep.
I'm going to have to put that pie away. Just kidding, folks. Just kidding. Dr. Brandy McKelvy is a sleep medicine physician at UTHealth Houston. Thanks very much.
Good night, sweet baby.
We know you. Houston Public.
We know you.
That's why you're listening right now. Take the next steps and become a new member of the station you rely on. Every gift makes a difference, and what matters most right now is supporting the station that brings you the news and information you rely on. It only takes a few minutes to make a big difference. Join as a new member today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from ROCO, kicking off the new year with beer and brass at St. Arnold Brewing, featuring the ROCO Brass Quintet, Wednesday, January 7th. Tickets at roco.org.
And from Discovery Green Conservancy, presenting Houston's outdoor ice skating rink, offering wintertime experience for all, surrounded by public art, downtown views, open through February 16th. More info, discoverygreen.com.
And now to a world where cats rule and humans happily comply. I speak of last month's Houston Cat Expo at Garage HTX in Houston's Art District. Houston Matters producer Brenda Valdivia dropped by to check out the event designed to, among other things, encourage cat adoption. First, she caught up with Houston Cat Expo organizer Alheli Ocampo.
So this event has been going on since last year. This is our 4th Cat Expo that we've been doing. So we love cats. We have cats of our own, and when we were looking for cats, it was kind of hard for us to find like the one that was for us. So we're like, why don't we just put all the cats together in one event where everyone's relaxed and it's a fun environment with other cat lovers, and it'll kind of pursue people too.
So how's this impacted your life?
I think it's brought a lot of excitement and happiness in my life. I'm actually a full-time teacher, so bringing this into my life, something I'm also passionate about, has just made me more motivated to just keep making this happen, because every event we see a bunch of cats getting adopted, and it's amazing to see them finally leaving the shelters, and we're making a difference doing this and bringing these cats to these events. So we bring all these cat lovers and they just get adopted, and it's just amazing.
I'm Carl Moz, and I am with Best Friends Animal Society, specifically the Houston branch. From our facility, we have adopted out 8 so far, potentially looking at 9 right now.
Wow, so how vital are festivals and events like this for adopting cats out of your organization?
We want to make sure that all animals have a good home. It's not just cats. We do work with dogs as well. And getting them out of that shelter is highly important to us. So we want to make adopting as accessible to everyone as possible.
Are there any tips that you recommend or expectations you recommend people have when they come in to an event like this? Because it is crowded, it is kind of noisy. When they come to check out a pet?
Yeah, so for an event like this, what I would recommend is always look around, try to get to know the cat. At an event like this, it's a little harder, but that doesn't mean like, hey, you couldn't open up a kennel like we have right here and maybe introduce yourself to the cat to see if it's the best fit, right? If the animal doesn't look like it's having the best time, that might not necessarily be the best fit for you, whereas the cat is super relaxed like Owen over here, that might be a good fit. It all depends on your personality. Your home is always worth taking into consideration as well.
Now, Owen is very chill. He's lying down in his box. I noticed that the majority of cats that are brought in here, I have not seen any of them hiss or spat or anything like that. Are these cats vetted before they come in, or are they like, this would be a great festival cat to take into and be adopted?
Yeah, so how it works with us is we're a foster agency, so that's why a lot of our animals are as chill as they are. We make sure that their medical is taken care of as best as possible. They're healthy, well taken care of, and then our fosters do a lot of the work where they'll take this animal into their home and give them their care and love that it needs, to a point where we can take to events like this, and they're used to this sort of thing.
I'm Thomas from the Houston area, obviously, and I came because my wife is a big cat lover, and she's broken me down. I've been overcome and overwhelmed.
I do see you wearing a t-shirt, and the reason I'm talking to you, it says Cat Daddy on it.
I'm a cat godfather. I'm cat all things, so yes.
So how many cats do you and your wife have?
We have 2 now. They're about a year old. They're litter mates, you would say. We had a previous cat for 19 years, and so that one, obviously was old, and we had to put her down at Christmas. So we're on the next 2, and it's like Star Trek. Resistance is futile. You will give in. I'm speaking to all the men out there that think they don't like cats. Just go ahead and go with it. It's not that bad.
What was the transition from I'll never have a cat, or okay, these are my wife's cats too, this one's mine too?
I always try to be open-minded, and so when my wife said she wanted to have a cat, I didn't want to say no. And I think when you're around cats and you're around animals, you just learn to adapt to them. You find out that you're probably not as anti-animal as you thought you were. And I got to admit, we've had good pets. They don't chew things up. They don't tear up the house. So that kind of helps, I think.
And what was the moment they won you over?
I think I discovered how much I was attached to the last cat, Pip, the 19-year-old. When we had to put her down, I think I wept and cried more than anybody else. And that's when I just recognized, okay, I'm a cat guy.
Yeah, my name's Chris, and the shop is Big Stretch Vinyl. It's a cat-themed record shop. It started about 6 months ago. I just have been collecting records my whole life, and I decided I wanted to start a side hobby, and I have a cat, and I really think it's important to help cats in Houston specifically, because there's a lot of stray cats on the streets. And it's a really big issue in Houston specifically because it's so warm year-round, which means cats are breeding almost all year round, and that's why you see a lot of stray cats in Houston.
What was your experience like with helping your cat and then finally the cats in your neighborhoods?
Yeah, so my experience with my cat is I was living in Austin, and it was during the pandemic, and we had a lot of free time on our hands, so we decided we wanted to adopt a cat. We didn't have any pets, so we adopted a rescue cat that had a really bad leg injury. And yeah, I haven't always been a cat person. I'm actually allergic to cats, but the more time I spend with them, the less it actually bothers me. So I don't really I'm not sneezing or anything today or anything like that.
Okay, so let's talk about these albums. You have My Neighbor Totoro, which I love. Yes. One of my favorite movies. And you have all sorts of CDs. You have the Cats soundtrack from the musical. And also just ones that I can't even begin to explain. What's a Spaynard fun title? What is this?
This is an emo rock record. I team up with artists and record labels, and so this is one of the albums I teamed up with a record label called Asian Man Records out of California. That's a DIY punk rock emo label, and all the records that they make are really awesome and limited edition. So this is a brown split record, the Totoro one. This is a really unique one because it's an original pressing. So it's from 1988, and it's from Japan, and there's probably not many copies left in existence.
Wow. When you started developing this side hustle to help you cats and made a cat-centric record shop, did you already have the majority of the albums you're starting with, or did you purposely seek them out?
I purposely seek them out. I had a few, but now I have over 200. This record is a band called Cat Temper, and all of the songs are cat names, so Growl's on film, and I just love it. And this is another artist that I teamed up with out of the Boston area. Every purchase from my shop, 15% of the proceeds will go back to helping cats in the community. And so today I partnered with Rose's Rescue, and they're based in Houston, and they help with basically saving cats off the street and making sure they have their vaccinations and are neutered, and to help reduce overpopulation.
My name is Rocio Cruz, and our business is Puking Herbals. We're a small business, and we feed more than 25 cats a day. This is our side job, to help them. We always encourage people to adopt, not shop, and spay and neuter your pets.
I just wanted to talk to you about these vests. So they're very punk. They have like metal bands on them. They have punk bands on them. They have some have spikes, not sharp spikes because they are kitties. Why did you decide to do the style of clothing this way?
Since my husband and me were metalheads, we're into metal many years ago, so I guess there's always people who's into this kind of music, and I have my own, my husband has his, so I just designed one for my cat. So my daughter is like, Mom, one of my friends wants for his cat. Can you make more? I'm like, I don't know, maybe. So that's probably when we started, and it's a way to help us.
What logos and patches did you put on it for your cat?
Actually, we have 12 rescue cats, but the one that let us put him on it, his name is Mugrovich. He's a pretty cool cat, and actually he's the model for Puking Herbals. You can see him on the sign.
My name is Thomas Lee, and I'm the owner of Non-Wasteless Lounge. We started about 2 years ago and opened it in Katy. For me, I'm retired military, about 21 years in the military. So I started this lounge basically because I rescued too many cats, and also want to provide a place for people to de-stress. And it is a lot of stress to be in the military, in the service. So I wanted to provide a place for people to come to get their cat fix or cat therapy, and that's how we started it.
What do you recommend for folks who aren't sure what to do if they get near a cat and they're not cat people, they're not like us, essentially?
I have people who have never seen a cat or encountered with a cat before. So what happened is they have their family member, their kids go in there. I just bring a cat, like a kid out there to meet them. And they usually will fall in love and want to go back in. And so it's just about taking that first initial step.
So you've seen a lot of cats, you've introduced a lot of kittens. Who's your baby? Who's the one for you?
She's not here, but her name is Rose. She's a ragdoll cat, and every morning she'll be right there on my chest trying to wake me up. It's like, what do you want? Oh, you're hungry, got you. I'm basically her butler, basically.
Who's this little guy right here?
This is Dobby. She's about 2 years old, Sphinx, and she belongs to my older sister. When I said belong to my older sister, the brother actually does the work of taking care of her. But Sphinx is a unique breed because they don't have any fur, but they're very high maintenance as far as cleanliness goes.
I've heard you had to use like oil, coconut oil, to keep them clean.
So every day you gotta wipe them down, and then you gotta apply coconut oil so that their skin doesn't crack. And if you don't clean them, your bed sheets will get stained. So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Oh, little baby. It's okay, Dobby. You're so cute.
No, she's fine. She's living the life.
I don't know how to describe her texture. It's so soft.
It's like a hot peach. Hot peach.
It's a hot peach.
Exactly. That's what I call that.
It's like petting a ham. I don't. She's so beautiful, though. I love her.
Like petting a ham. Love that. Houston Matters producer Brenda Valdivia there talking with Nine Whiskers Lounge owner Thomas Lee, one of the vendors at last month's Houston Cat Expo. And that will do it for today's show. The Houston Matters team includes Michael Haggerty, Joshua Zinn, Brenda Valdivia, Mincho Jacob, and Laura Walker. Jared Carroll's our technical director. Remember, you can check out Houston Matters anytime. Subscribe to our podcast for the audio. Visit Houston Public Media's YouTube channel to check out the video. You can comment, like, and subscribe while you're there. Reach out to us anytime with questions or comments about the show at talk@houstonmatters.org. On tomorrow's program, the political implications of the U.S. arresting Nicolas Maduro and other developments in our regular Wednesday political roundup. Also, Houston food writers discuss their favorite new restaurants that opened up over the last year on this month's installment of The Full Menu. And our Joshua Zinn talks with saxophonist and composer Miguel Zinón ahead of his performance with Kinetic this Saturday. I'm Craig Cohen. Join us tomorrow for those and other Houston Matters.
1 year after the wildfires here in Los Angeles, small businesses are still a little stuck.
I won't lie,